Welcome to the 707, a weekly half-hour program produced by KRCB, a service of NorCal Public Media. The 707 features voices and stories from your community, stories about a life well lived, and stories that show how we are connected to each other. I'm your host, Michelle Marques. Today's show is about Chef John Ash, known to Sonoma County and the culinary world as the father of wine country cuisine. To me, he was John, the co-host of KSRO's Good Food Hour and my friend and colleague for over 20 years. He passed away on Thursday, August 7th after a brief illness at the age of 83. During today's episode, I'll share clips from 2 decades of shows, as well as a heartfelt conversation I had with Steve Garner, the founder of KSRO's Good Food Hour, who co-hosted the show with Chef John Ash since it first aired in 1987.
We were, of course, a rock and roll radio station forever, KSRO, and when I started in 1981, I was a rock and roll disc jockey. And in 1987, the handwriting was on the wall that AM rock and roll may not have much of a future. So the powers that be decided they were going to transition to a talk format and decided to pretty much let almost all the staff go and start from the ground up. But they came to me and said, you know, Garner, in between your records, you talk so much and you do so many interviews with musicians and you're always doing these features. Would you want to try to make the transition to talk radio? And I said, yeah, sure. They said, well, what kind of shows would you want to do on Saturday morning? And I said, well, I love to garden and I love to cook, so maybe I could talk about those topics. And they said, well, if we can sell it, sure, go ahead. And would you want to do those alone? And I said, well, I'm more comfortable having a co-host would be great.
Right.
Someone to bounce ideas off of. So they said, do you have anyone in mind? And I said, well, I think possibly for the gardening show, there's a guy locally in Santa Rosa named Fred King of King's Nursery. And I shop at his nursery. Maybe he would be interested. So we got in touch with Fred, and he said, yeah, it sounds cool. So Fred started in October 1987 with me doing Garden Talk. And we had no idea about the food show at that point. Like, I have no idea. Well, Larry Sharoni must be credited, who was our program director. And, well, how about John Ash? I said, whoa, John Ash. I've eaten at his restaurant in Montgomery Village, and he's a big name. I don't know whether he would want to do something like this. So they approached John, and we got together, and it was like we had known each other our whole lives. It was that instantaneous, the easy rapport between us. And he said, this sounds great. It sounds like a lot of fun. So we started doing the show. And in the early years, we just talked for an hour. We had no guests at all.
Really?
We would just chit-chat about what each of us were cooking and what he was working on. And then a few years later, he joined Fetzer, of course, Fetzer Winery in the early 90s. And that became a whole different part of the conversation. And he started booking chefs at Fetzer for their Celebrity Chef series. And that's when we started kind of bringing other voices into the show, cookbook authors, Emeril Lagasse, and all these type of people. And the show went from there.
Steve Garner hosted Good Food Hour with Chef John Ash for 38 years, talking with restaurateurs, cookbook authors, chefs, bakers, cheesemakers, and all sorts of interesting guests every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. In 2004, I started working with Steve and John as a producer for their remote broadcasts at locations across the Bay Area. Here's a clip from the 2017 Gravenstein Apple Fair in Sebastopol, where we always set up near an old oak tree across from the Dutton Ranch Apple booth.
Broadcasting live from the original Gravenstein Apple Fair. This is the one, isn't it?
It is. How many years is this? 44?
This is the 44th, and we've been here for 20 years at the Gravenstein, starting in 96, so 21 years.
So do you remember it back in 1996? It was smaller then. Obviously.
It was much smaller.
Yeah.
And it has just grown to be kind of the destination fair in Sonoma County because it's so unique. Yeah. I'm Steve Garner along with Chef John Ash, and you have been an integral part of this fair for many, many years, going back to remember the Chef's Invitational back in 96 when we first started broadcasting here.
Yeah.
Invited a lot of, it's funny to look back, restaurateurs of restaurants that are no longer here to participate with creating apple themed recipes, and there was judging involved and awards and presentations. And that was a great few years.
Well, and it still goes on, with the chef. It's a little different in terms of the chef demos now, but it's always exciting, and it's exciting to see the young chefs. I say young because I'm so old, who have now taken the reins. You remember what the recipes used to be? To be apple pancakes. And
but now, I'm remembering back in 2010 that you did a demo
what did I do?
Of your Gravenstein John Ash grilled cheese sandwiches.
Oh, that's right. Well,
do you remember?
But much simpler. It's one of my favorite things.
And that was with the apples.
With apples and a kind of curry mayonnaise and cheese on top of it, and you melted it all together, and it was really delicious.
It was, and that was your short-lived venture. What was that called again?
It was called Hot Cheese.
Hot Cheese, yes. And John Ash promoting, and it was going to be a worldwide, it was going to be challenging McDonald's at one point. I
had this fantasy of, we'll start this, and we'll be able to travel everywhere with our little hot cheese tent.
And they were fantastic grilled cheese sandwiches.
Do you know what the problem was? They took too long to make. And so people would get kind of pissy.
Well, it wasn't a 90-second product.
No.
But they were great. The year you were here, people loved
As co-hosts, they had that easy rapport that Steve said was there from the beginning. And John extended that to every guest, making them feel at ease with his genuine interest and happy chuckle. I even experienced it myself. For a short time in 2006 and 2007, Steve and John invited me to join them on air for a semi-regular segment where I would go to the farmer's market and share the items I picked up with them in the studio and talk about what I might make with it. Here's a clip from June 2006.
Yep. And you could hear the actual sounds of the bag.
So you found some treasures?
I found some treasures. Crescent Farms, I believe, they had the big squash blossoms, and they had some organic cilantro, so I got some of that. It's very fragrant.
Did they leave the roots on, that cilantro?
Yeah, you could see it.
Look at that. Well, one of the things, so I'll throw this out too, in Southeast Asia, especially in Asian cuisine generally, the roots are as highly prized as the tops, so don't throw those roots away. Eat them.
I can chop them up and put them in?
You can chop them up. They're every bit as good. Actually, they're more intensely flavored than the leaves. And I don't know why in most supermarkets I always whack them off, but if you go to Asian markets, they always leave them on.
So you can just rinse them and
eat them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I got some garlic. It's kind of purpley garlic.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? Look at that. That doesn't look like the supermarket.
No, it doesn't. No, because, this is garlic. The reason you'll never find this in the supermarket is that it doesn't store well. I mean, you can't keep this around for 6 months,
Right.
But it's so delicious.
Exactly. I can't wait to use it.
Beautiful.
I got...
So you're going to tell you, I can hear the recipe building.
It is building in my head. This is a big purple new onion.
Those torpedo.
Exactly.
The young torpedo onions. They're so sweet.
I got this from the guys at the Patch. I love the guys at the Patch. They're really nice.
Wonderful.
I got a peach. Nice peach. That's from the Twin Peak Orchard.
There it is. Smell that one.
And it's nice and firm. And I got it for a reason to be nice and firm.
Yeah. But there it is. You stick your nose right in that stem end, and you can feel it coming around. Can't you? Gorgeous peach.
I have this, which is a sweet lime. I tried a bite of this, and it actually has almost no acidity at all. You can eat it kind of like an orange.
I don't know.
Wow, look at it. It's kind of yellow-green.
Yellow-green, exactly.
So some type of hybrid.
I got a nice big fillet of halibut, and they even put in with me a little ice pack to make sure that it would stay cool for however long it took me. Yeah, so I'll bring it back next time. Give it back.
That's nice.
And then I did spend a little bit more than the $15 allotment that I had. I'm sorry. I went $16.40, guys.
Okay.
And I got this. It's an ambrosia melon. I got it from Love Farms. You got to smell that. It smells so good.
He's a great grower up there in Healdsburg. He really grows some outstanding melons.
Same thing. You can smell. When you smell them,
it's so vibrant.
Because if they pick them unripe, they'll never develop that aroma.
It was amazing, too. I was looking at the different ones. There are some, and you can see this one starting to crack a little bit at the bottom, but there were some that were so ripe, they were bursting open at the bottom. It was beautiful, and they smell so good.
Don't they? You could perfume your dainty drawers with them.
I don't think so.
So that was your entire purchase?
This was everything that I got. And what I'm going to make is halibut. I'm going to bake it in parchment paper on papillote. And then I'm making a peach salsa to put over the top of it. And I also have dessert, so I think that's why I'm allowed to go a little bit over the $15. I'm going to just cut up this melon, this ambrosia melon, and make a simple syrup with the sweet lime.
Gosh, you should hire John Ash and Company.
I know.
Some great ideas. Now, to explain the unpoppiote, have you done this before, Michelle?
I've done it before, and the first time I did it was very frustrating because you have to use a large sheet of parchment paper, and if you're not very adept at folding things, you're not an origami specialist or anything, it can be very difficult. When you bake it in the oven, the heat will release all of the steam from the food and then cook it in steam and bake it at the same time.
So do chefs still use this method in restaurants?
Yeah. It's one of those things that it sort of comes back it's been away for a while now, so this is very cutting edge, what you're doing.
I'm cutting edge.
And actually what's very cool is that you can, it seems kind of silly, but you can buy these bags, parchment bags already made, so you can slip anything into it and just sort of fold them over and put them in the oven. It makes life easier because sometimes it actually is pretty simple once you get the hang of it, just kind of twisting and making sure that the parchment is well sealed. And that's an important thing to do because then when you come to the table, it's puffed up, you cut a little slit in it, and all of those wonderful aromas hit you in the face.
Chef John Ash shared his knowledge in a way that was easily accessible, no matter what your skill level in the kitchen might be. In the next segment of the 707, I'll share more of my conversation with Steve Garner, and we'll talk about John the Educator. This is KRCB.
KRCB is Sonoma County's NPR station, featuring the voices, sounds, and culture that make our home unique. From the heartwarming tales of postcards,
our grandmother was the founder of Juneteenth in Sonoma County,
to the Arts Briefs series shining a spotlight on the incredible youth in the arts scene.
Mariachi can express everything that you feel.
And farm tales.
We live in this beautiful area that allows all forms of success in agriculture.
Your stories, your station. KRCB 104.9, Sonoma County's NPR station.
Welcome back to the 707 on KRCB. I'm your host, Michelle Marques. Today we're remembering Chef John Ash, who passed away on August 7th. For many people, he was the man associated with John Ash and Company, the restaurant he founded in 1980 in Santa Rosa's Montgomery Village. Chef Ash was also very concerned about sustainability, and he served on the board of the Monterey Bay Aquarium's Seafood Watch to help people know what to choose at the fish counter. John wrote 6 cookbooks, 2 of which were James Beard Award winners. In my experience working with him for 2 decades at KSRO Radio, my favorite side of John was seeing his work as an educator. At a cooking demo during the California Artisan Cheese Festival in Petaluma, I watched from the back of the room as he spoke to a crowd of about 100 people and asked them to raise their hands if they were bakers. Then he said, "I know something about you. Your sock drawers are perfectly organized." I spoke with John's Good Food Hour co-host Steve Garner about that aspect of John Ash.
He was just as at ease with the average everyday cook as he was the top echelon of chefs that he interacted with all around the world. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't realize he was one of the first 7 or 8 chefs hired at the TV Food Network. This is a major part of his career that he never talks about and people don't know about. In 1995, when the Food Network began, they hired 6 or 7 chefs, one of them being John Ash, and the other was Emeril Lagasse. When I went through the archives this past week, I found the original program from 1995, the Food Network debut.
Wow.
And each of the chefs had a full color page, Emeril, Susan Feniger, all the others, and then third was Chef John Ash.
Huh.
So he touched a lot of people, but of course in Sonoma County, his home, but all around the country. And then, of course, Guy Fieri took it to another level, but that was a number of years later.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think of as John's legacy in Sonoma County?
Well, it kind of encapsulated with his major book that he released in 1994-95, From the Earth to the Table. People take this for granted. Now it's been used all to death. But back then, 30 years ago, no one really had used that term before John. He says nothing is original. He probably had heard it from someone. He's very modest, as you know. But it was the first time that really had traction. And chefs writers, journalists, all started using that term, that from the earth to the table. He had just profound respect for ingredients. It was all about the ingredients. Technique was important, all these other things, but he was an ingredient guy first and foremost. He taught me that. And also, I'll tell you, minimalism. People don't credit John with his approach to plating. I have to tell you how important this was. When I was attending several of the Fetzer dinners in the early 90s, I sat next to an editor of one of the major food magazines in the country. I asked her, I said, how are you enjoying the meal? And she said, oh, it's wonderful. And I said, well, John's a great cook, isn't he? And she said, well, John is a very, very good cook. But there are many as good, if not better, cooks, chefs than John Ash. But I've never, ever seen any chef be able to plate like John Ash. He has a sense, an eye for color, for symmetry, for light, for dark, for height that is unmatched. And I learned that when he would present a plate of food, it was artistry. He had a degree in fine arts, and he was a very fine painter, which people don't know about John.
Yeah.
And he brought that sense of color, and it has to look beautiful without being labored, not the tweezer thing. He just had a feel for it. He just knew how to present food on a plate, and that food writer nailed it.
Chef John Ash could also be extremely silly. Here's a clip from a promotional spot he recorded for a recipe contest about beans in 2009.
It's the perfect food, a nutritional and delicious powerhouse that has fed the world for over 10,000 years. Hi, I'm John Ash.
And I'm Steve Garner, taking center stage in our 23rd annual Good Food Hour recipe contest. It's Cooking with Beans.
Beans are the inspiration for classic dishes from around the world. French cassoulet, Louisiana red beans and rice, Italian Tuscan bean soup, Mediterranean hummus, black bean quesadillas, to good old New England baked beans. You have my permission to go bean crazy.
4 finalists will join us for a live taste-off broadcast of the Good Food Hour on Saturday, November 7th at G&G Market in Santa Rosa. As always, there'll be great prizes.
Bean appetit!
Everything in life has a beginning and an end. I asked Steve Garner about his final moments with John.
We all get to a point where, if we're honest with ourselves, we know we're not delivering what we want to deliver on the air. And we started this conversation probably 6 months ago. John was still doing great on the show, but he said, there's going to come a time when I'm not going to probably be able to do the show anymore. Let's start thinking about a transition plan. And we did, and we have a couple ideas of possible hosts, because I plan to continue the show. The station seems to be on board with that and supporting that decision. But we did start looking around and talking with people. And as John's health started to deteriorate, it did become harder for him to do the show, to contribute, to put words in. It's hard for me to talk about, sorry.
It's okay.
So he was struggling for a while. And when you know someone for 38 years, you know right away when they're having trouble. And he had told me, actually a couple of years ago, he said, you've got to promise me one thing. I said, what? He said, you've got to promise me that you'll tell me when I'm no longer cutting it on the air. And I said, oh, I absolutely will. Well, I didn't keep my promise. I just couldn't tell him, well, John, you're just not cutting it anymore. And I'm sorry, this is so intimate.
No.
But as long as he wanted to come in and do the show, he was coming in to do the show. So there came a point when he was unable to do the show, and it was not too long after that when he passed away. And I did see him about 6-7 days. Should I tell this story?
Please do.
Yeah. He couldn't do the Saturday show, and I knew he couldn't because I talked to him on Friday. He said, no, it's probably best that I don't try to do the show. I said, well, I'm going to come over after the show on Saturday, and I want to have lunch together, and I'll bring something. And what would you want to eat? He said, I'm really not hungry. I said, I know you haven't been hungry, but what if I brought you a quart of matzo ball soup? would you eat that? He said, matzo ball soup. Yeah, I would eat that. So I brought over a quart of matzo ball soup, and we sat outside on his back deck, and we shared 2 big bowls of matzo ball soup, and he ate that. And I could see that he was loving eating that matzo ball soup. And so that was the good part. And then I also made some panna cotta, because John loved panna cotta. So I said, I got a surprise for you for dessert. I made panna cotta. I said, oh, great, let's have some of that. So he's spooning some of that up, and I'm spooning it, looking at him, waiting for his accolades. And I said, so, well, how is my panna cotta? He said, the texture's really good, but it's not nearly sweet enough. And I had purposely, I didn't tell you this, Michelle, but I had purposely reduced the sugar in the recipe because John really should not have had a whole lot of sugar.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm watching out for his health.
You cannot fool that chef's tongue, though, right?
He knew right away that he knew I had cheated on the sugar. Right. So we kind of got it. He smiled at me, and I smiled. I said, I gotcha. Yeah. So I did say, well, next time, okay, I'm not going to cheat on the sugar. Good. So that was our last meal on that Saturday, and then he was hospitalized several days later. Mm. So I felt like we had closure, I think is the word. We really had some heart-to-heart about all the great times we'd had on the air, all the great people, all the great meals we had shared, the travel that we had done together. We had a great couple of weeks in Ireland together, which was so much fun. We had a lot of great adventures together.
John Thomas Ashe died on Thursday, August 7th, at the age of 83. I'm your host and producer of this program, Michelle Marques. This show is a service of NorCal Public Media. Our president and CEO is Darren Lachelle.